Join me, Anthony Beard, for off-the-cuff conversations with Dr. Paula Lewis. Hop in and buckle up as we take a ride through the world of school psychology. In each episode of Car Ride Conversations with Dr. Paula Lewis, the modern school psychologist, we dive deep into the challenges, triumphs, and evolving landscape of this critical field. From practical tips for educators and parents to insightful discussions on mental health and student well-being, no topic is off limits. Whether you're a school psychologist, a teacher, parent, or just curious about the field, our candid car ride chats will inform, inspire, and entertain you. So join us for a journey like no other as we explore the ins and outs of school psychology from the passenger seat. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now to Car Ride Conversations with Dr. Paula Lewis, the modern school psychologist. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform.
Alrighty, so this is Dr. Paula Lewis. We are with Shanae Pritchett and on our way to New England Fish Market and Restaurant in Jensen Beach, Florida. And we're going to start this conversation about life-changing work, reflections of a contract school psychologist.
All right, so we're going to begin our question by simply asking Shanae Pritchett to introduce herself. Introduce yourself to our vast audience.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Shanae Pritchett. I am a school psychologist out of New Jersey. Mom of 3. And I am working my way and navigating through the virtual space and just trying to figure out exactly what my niche is, but I think I'm getting there.
And how long have you been in the virtual space?
About 2.5 years.
So when you made that transition from what I call the brick and mortar or your traditional school psychology settings, what was that transition like for you?
For me, it was definitely in the beginning a lot of questions, right? So similar to what other people experience when they hear like, oh, virtual school psychologist, what is that? What does that even mean? How do you do that? I was lucky enough to be brought in by a colleague of mine now, also graduated with me and my cohort. I would say we're friends as well and business associates. But she kind of brought me, she definitely brought me into this space. So, all my questions went to her and she answered them very well. And then a lot of it I learned from experience. And she was able to do well, and she just wanted to, share that with me. So
Shanae, let me say this because you just triggered something. I was just on a presentation through Presence Learning, and they had this Dr. Melissa Mitchell, and she wrote this book called From Survival to Service, The Life-Altering Impacts of Telepractice. And she made an interesting statement in this presentation. She said that, this is a space of telehealth that it seems like a lot of school psychologists are not comfortable with yet, or even if you are introducing this to them, nobody's like jumping up and running to do contractual work. So what are your thoughts about that? Because it seems like that, and just from some of my experiences, just telling some colleagues, it seems to be an uncomfortable discussion, or like maybe feeling like this is something that is not for me, but really not hearing what it can offer you in terms of that, work-life balance.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomena among not only school psychologists, but just in the education field in general. That, we are in the schools in education in the public space, and there is definitely a comforting level of security there. There's a level of, we could be, the most miserable people at work, and we just stay there.
Yes.
And because, we know this evil. So we know what that, I'm miserable here, but I could go somewhere else and it's new and I could be miserable there. So we're just very hesitant about just taking that leap of faith or whatever it is. You don't necessarily have to just give up everything in your work life as you know it, as you've been accustomed to doing it, to do virtual work. That is not how I did it. I am still in the brick and mortar setting, but I do also do virtual work. I've been on leave now from my job for 20 months. And I have to make a choice, like, okay, are you going to go back? Are you going to, try to juggle both? But it is not something that you just have to just turn your back on. Like, you can just dip your toes in and see if you like that temperature.
Well, that's what you just said is what I've been experiencing, and just some of the conversations I've had with people. It is so true, but it's like, I don't know, even just the receiving of that information, it's like an uncomfortable discussion with people. So, but yeah, it's such valid points you just made.
Yeah, and imagine a lot of people are just afraid of the unknown, right? There's just not a lot. This is not a part of your curriculum and your training. It's nothing that is spoken about by school districts. It's just something that you kind of find your way into, and there's a very pressing need. Once you're in that space, there's very pressing need for the virtual school psychologist, yeah?
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's all over the country, and there's a national shortage, right? And then there's some places where there's more of a shortage than others. Like me, I'm in the New Jersey, New York area. There's a lot of graduate programs here that offer school psychology, so it's a bit more saturated. So you probably won't find too much work over here, but in those places that have a lot of rural areas where there's not a lot of programs, the Midwest area, Michigan and Georgia, there's very high need, and they just can't fill those positions, and they probably never will be able to fill them with someone who is in the area.
Exactly.
So,
even some of these served communities, these rural areas.
Right. Yeah, those little small, little very small school, like they're still like in school houses that are out there. They'll never be able to find probably someone that is there. So, but they can find somebody who is probably living in New Jersey and is in that saturated area, like myself, and you're providing a service for them. You're also not being overworked, because a lot of this is contractual work, independent work, where you're going to take as much work as you think you can handle, and you can say no,
and that's the power in it right there in so many ways, because you can, and no one understands that you can customize it the way you want to. You let, the recruiters, for example, or even in terms of your maybe gaining your own contract, what you can do, how you can support the district. And I think that's where people don't really understand at all. You can make it work the way you want to make it.
Exactly.
So would you share with our listeners the factors that led you to leave the traditional school psychology model and embark upon this new venture of virtual school psychology?
So I would say there are a lot of factors. The main factors would be just like, the dissatisfaction with being in the environment that I was in, whether it was administration or not really doing the job that I paid thousands of dollars to be trained to do. So, and, the politics, the constant interruptions that you get when you're in the building, you don't have that when you are working from home. Also, again, I said I'm a mom of 3. I'm a new mom, so my kids are 4, and 1.5.
Oh, amazing.
So, so this really came about with them and just being able to stay home, postpartum, and not having to rush back to work because I don't have, an income. So that was a big factor.
And you're present. You're very present now in your family.
Yes. And like you were mentioning before, you can tailor it to, to what you need in the day, right? So if my kid has to stay home sick, I can make my day so that, okay, I'm going to do some paperwork while they're napping, or I'm going to do some paperwork when they go to sleep before they wake up, things like that. So yeah, just like it's a lot of factors, but I would say those were the main ones. The income is nice. That's definitely a factor. I live in a, cost of living is very high where I live. I'm like 15 minutes away from Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
So, that part. But yeah, there were many factors there.
Well, what I would like for you to do now is to take us through a day in the life of a virtual school psychologist. What does that day look like, feel like, and how would you compare it to the more traditional model?
So, a day would look very similar to a day in a brick and mortar, but more probably of your ideal day. So if you have, those school psychologists out there, you have a plan in your mind of what you want to get accomplished in the day, and a lot of times that doesn't happen because of other factors, right? The interruptions. There might be a fire drill. There might be, an evacuation drill that totally throws a wrench in your day. So being able to, work from home, you are going to be able to tailor the day however you may see fit. I might I usually do emails in the morning, and then I'll schedule a testing session. For me, I will normally schedule a testing session between 60 and 90 minutes max. I could do longer if the student is almost done, depending how the student is, feeling, if, the age and all those things. And then after I'm done, I'll score it, start the report, do all those things. It could be a day where, hey, you know what? Today I just feel like I'm going to just schedule all my testing for, one day. I can do 3 or 4 sessions in one day if that's what I want to do, because I'm home. All I have to do is just log on. The student has to log on. You don't have to worry about so much setting. There's a little bit of prep of like getting prepared for a testing session, but it's not as much as if you were in person, like with a kit and clean up and take the student back to class and then go get the other student and things like that. So your time doing those other things, you can get more done. You can get more work done. It also may be a day where, I'm just going to report right today, and I don't have to worry about any other distractions. And with the report writing, any indirect time, you can flex your time, right? So I may feel like, on the weekend, hey, I'm not doing anything else. I'm going to get these reports done because during the week I have a doctor's appointment, or my kid has a doctor's appointment, or I'm going to take them to swim, or, whatever the case might be. You have that flex time that you don't have in the brick and mortar. I mean, you could do that in brick and mortar. I wouldn't suggest it because you're working past your contract hours.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and there are lots of school psychs who do that. And hey, I mean, if you like it, I love it. I don't do that.
I mean, Shanae, you just said something because you do feel like a sense of freedom to be able to just make your schedule and not having the stress of like, okay, I can go out into the community during the day, run my errands, and return back to do whatever I need to do in that remote virtual space. So, you just hit it on the head that it's that flexibility that you are allowed, just because you're able to function in that way, in a remote situation. So you hit it right on the head.
yeah, and there are even there are virtual schools out there that work with psychologists. They need psychologists, and when you're working with a virtual school, you have even more flex time because you don't really have to do, like meetings and such. Yeah, that's during school hours. But even your testing, if you wanted to test a student and it's after non-traditional school hours, you can do that because they are at home. Their school location is at home. So if the parents are like, oh, hey, can we do it at 4:30 to 5:30? They can do that. I've even tested students on the weekend if I had to finish up and, the parents were okay with that. The student was okay with that. We would get it done on the weekend. So,
well, Shanae, would you say, well, no, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like you just said something regarding the time frame where you can do these assessments. We were just having a conversation, this was in another forum, about some school psychs who are on the East Coast having the ability to get certified in states maybe on the West Coast, which if they are in the brick and mortar space, they could still have that flexibility to do some assessments, on
right.
West Coast time, for example, after hours. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done that. I have contracts in different time zones. There's even there was one contract I didn't work it, but it was like in America, Samoa, and time difference. Yeah, the time difference is it would have put me kind of working. I think it was like 2 p.m. It was in the afternoon, so maybe like a 1 p.m. to like a 5 or 6 p.m. At night, and that if I was at a brick and mortar, I could be working from 3 to 6 and test a student from 3 to 6, or even if it's counseling services or whatever the case might be. And even if you're on the West Coast, there are some who get up extra early and they work East Coast jobs. So it works both ways.
Well, let's go to technology. A lot of people may be afraid to jump into this field of virtual school psychology because they're concerned about technology, concerned about internet and equipment and such. What technology and resources do you find necessary to conduct psychoeducational evaluations through a virtual platform? Or what equipment do you need to do your job and do it well?
Yeah, so the equipment is not really much different than what you already use in a brick and mortar. You just need a computer, desktop or laptop or whatever you might use, an extra monitor, and internet connection, and you're good to go. You can work from anywhere. You don't really need any other necessary things. People do use, as you start working, you might want to have things that you feel like it's easier for you. Like for me, I use an external mouse because that little touch thing I just work faster with a mouse. You might want two extra screens instead of one, but one is fine for me. I use one. You want a good, secure internet connection, Wi-Fi or Ethernet connection is fine. But yeah, other than that, you don't even need like an office space that is just for that. You can work at your dining room table. Like there's there's virtual backgrounds. Nobody's gonna know where you are. But as far as like with all these virtual backgrounds now, like in the past when we just started doing like all the Zoom and stuff, we didn't have that, so everybody can see what's in your house. But you don't really you don't need too much. Then you probably already have a headset. If you like noise cancellation, it's good, but if nobody's in your house, it's quiet, you don't need that.
Shanae, do you find the use of a docu-camera necessary in any cases?
No.
Okay.
No, I do not have one. I've done hundreds, of assessments by now. I've thought about getting one, but I've never really gotten to it like, oh yeah, I really need this. But because you can do it without. If you have it, it will probably make it easier. But you don't necessarily need it. You can use your another device as a document camera. So if you have like a tablet or if you have a phone, you can kind of set that up and use that as an external camera. So
I know sometimes there's some administrations people wonder about that involve blocks, and but we know that there's some substitutions that can occur in some on one particular assessment where you would not need to utilize the docu-camera. And of course, as you know, can you speak to us about the facilitator on the other side that may help in supporting you in the evaluation?
Yeah, so the facilitator is important. You don't always have that, but if I talked about before, like if they're doing virtual learning, remote learning, then they're at home. So you won't always have a facilitator. Parent might be there, parent might not be there. You might not want the parent there. But as far as if it is in a brick and mortar, if the student is there in that school setting, a facilitator is very helpful, especially depending on the student. The younger they are, you'll probably need the facilitator help more. But I find that the older students, you don't really need them. The facilitator is just there, maybe if there's some technical difficulties, they can help out a little bit. But sometimes the student knows more than than the facilitator as far as like the computer and how to fix it.
Exactly.
So they're like, you don't really need them all the time, but you definitely need to know what type of student you're working with. Like a younger one, yeah, you're going to want to have them there. A student who is functioning at a lower level, you're going to want to have them there. Maybe have some attention issues or behavior things, bathroom breaks and stuff like that. If they need it, then you're probably going to want to have a facilitator.
Well, yeah, that's what, from my experience, I mean, you're so correct. It does seem that in some cases, yeah, the student pretty much is self-sufficient, they can do what you need them to do in this situation. And it's a really great assessment. I even find them, as you would as well, it seems like they're very engaged, and the rapport building is so easy too, in this virtual situation. Do you think you've had successful rapport with students?
Yeah, for the most part, I've been successful with students. I've had students who they don't want to turn on their cameras, that whole thing, when we were on during pandemic and we had the virtual learning, and students are in there and they don't have their cameras on. You still experience students who don't want to do that, but pretty much every student has turned the camera on for me in terms of assessment. Counseling, that's different. You kind of gotta work with it. They don't want to turn the camera on. You can at least talk to them and have a conversation. But as far as assessment wise, yeah, they will turn the camera on. I'll say, okay, you can angle it here. I don't have to look directly at your face, or kind of turn it so that they're not looking at themselves. Sometimes that's distracting when they're looking at their own image. So yeah, that hasn't been an issue for me.
Well, I just want to go into this next question here. We know there have been some misconceptions surfacing out into the school psychology community. Some feel uncomfortable with virtual assessments, or just are not believers of this revolutionary way of work. Given the importance of psychoeducational evaluations and understanding a student's learning needs, do you notice significant differences in the effectiveness or outcomes of assessments when administered face-to-face compared to a virtual platform?
I have not.
And I could speak to it. I mean, that Presence Learning came out with the research and the article, and I could make it available for our listeners. This article, was written by Stephanie Taylor, National School Certified School Psychologist. And, as we could see, the results, it indicated no index or test had either a significant difference between administrations. And this was across multiple measures. There was no significant difference, compared to, having this evaluation in the brick and mortar space compared to a remote evaluation. Do you have any thoughts about that, or just your experience, based on these misconceptions, or people feeling uncomfortable about the remote evaluation?
Yes. So actually, my friends who, pulled me into this, she was part of that present study.
Cool.
So yes. She was there when she helped launch that study. And in my experience, there has not been a significant difference between testing in person versus virtual. I was one of those people too, well, how do you do that? Is it going to be a valid interpretation and everything? But it's really, really not much different. You have to kind of really take yourself through what we do in person and see that when you're on the other side of a screen, it's really, it's the same test. The student pretty much performs the same. I've had looked in the records, and then I'll test the student, like if it's a reeval, and the scoring is a lot of times spot on. Like it's just like, oh, okay, oh, that's the same thing that they got. Yes, and I'm like, all right, good. Is it like that every single time? No, but we know that there are other factors that go into how a student performs. They might just be having a bad day. You can't really compare two different assessments. So if they gave one type of assessment and I gave a different type of assessment and they scored a little bit different, a little bit higher, a little bit lower, can't really compare it directly. And we know that we're looking at all points of data, not just what they did on the assessment. Exactly. But sometimes if you do, right, you are the clinician, like, hey, this is way off. Let me give another assessment, you know what I'm saying? And see what happens.
I mean, what we would do anyway in the traditional model, in the traditional on-site situation, it's not any different.
Right, you would investigate and see, what's going on here. But for the most part, I would say 90% of the cases, if they have been tested before or any other data that I've collected, is usually consistent with what I get when I test.
So based on your experience, has there ever been an instance where a virtual evaluation was not suitable for a student? And if so, why was that not the best approach?
Yes, there have been situations where I've tested students, and I would say virtual is probably not appropriate, and I would recommend that, like, okay, for the next time, or recommend that they be tested again in person. But usually that is a student who is very active. So if they're extremely active and they can't really focus on the screen, I would definitely not recommend a virtual assessment. But also, if I was in person, I would probably get the same or similar results, but in person you have more time, not more time, but you have more opportunity to give that student a break, and I can get up and I can go take them for a walk, or I can we'll say reward them, not bribe, but reward them. Reward them with something like, hey, give me 10 minutes here, or let's just focus on this, and then you can have this Kit Kat right here, things like that. But I can't really do that when I'm behind the screen, or give them a break to go play a game, or whatever it is that's gonna motivate them to kind of try to focus a little bit, because some of it is just out of their control. They can't do it. But
Shanae, you've had that. If you've had a facilitator present, has there been cases where you had the facilitator give that student a break and take them just to kind of take a walk during the
yes I will have facilitator like, oh, take my break, or it's sometimes again, it depends on the activity level. So if the activity level, if it's like something, if it's mild, then that usually is fine, it's good. But if they're very, very active, I mean, we know even if it was in person, we would still be like, interpret with caution still.
Right, exactly.
It would still go that way. So
All right. Well, I know our listeners want to hear about the financial aspects of the contractual school psychologist work. And I promise that we're going to get to that. But right now, Shanae, I want you to tell us what you enjoy about your work as a contractual school psychologist, or I would call a modern school psychologist.
So what I enjoy the most is mentioned it before, is the freedom. So for me, freedom has like the ability to just be able to have options is liberating. Right. I've always been a person that I want to have options. I don't want to be like in a box. This is all I can do. This is it. There is a method to my madness. There's a reason why I have like 3 or 4 graduate degrees because I refuse to be put in the box. I used to be a teacher. I was a teacher for the beginning of my educator years, about 8.5 years before I became a school psych, and I really did love teaching in the beginning. I wasn't loving it so much towards the end of my career, and I was like, you know what? I had a degree in math, and my certificate was in K through 12 math, and I'm sure there are things that I could have done with a math degree, but I wasn't interested in those things.
Hey, but school psychologists are like the best statisticians, so you
right.
You are right in the right field.
Not interested in any of those things that involved more numbers than what I was actually doing. Funny story is I became a math major because I hated to write papers. It's like, I need to do it. And guess what? I did not have to write many papers in college. While everybody else was like, I have to write this paper. I was like, oh no. I have a test tomorrow. It's 10 questions. I'm going to cram. I'm going to study and be done with it. Right? So...
and now you're writing psychoeducational evaluation reports.
Right, and now I'm writing these long reports. It's funny how that just goes and goes and goes. So towards the end of my career as a teacher, I was like, I think I need to get out of the classroom, and I always wanted to be an advocate for students, and when you're a teacher, kind of puts you in more of a box. You can't advocate as much as you would like to for students. So I'm like, what else can I do? So did my research, started actually with going back to school to be an admin, and didn't like it, right? So I stopped that program and I went into the educational psychology and then school psychology. So as I grow through this part of my career life, again, I don't want to be put in a box. So you're still put in a box here. You're a school psychologist. You can only work in a school with the school. For the most part, we work in the public education sector, and I eventually did go back to school, and I got my master's in mental health.
Oh wow!
Counseling.
That's amazing.
So now I have my LAC, so that I can go into private work when the time comes.
And when you say your LAC, just for those listeners who may not be school psychologists, but what does that mean?
Yeah. So in New Jersey, licensed associate counselor, until you have enough hours to become a licensed professional counselor. So it's very similar to like a licensed social worker, where they can, have their own private practice, bill insurance and things like that. Kind of when you're a psychologist, you generally have to get a doctorate degree to do that, and then be licensed. And I didn't go the doctorate route, wanted to, but working full-time kind of blocked that, so this was the other way to do that. So for me, just having the options, like when you are working contractually, you have the options. You can look at something and be like, hey, you know what, this is not the right fit for me. I need to move on and do something else. And it's not like being in a brick and mortar and you just pretty much, usually in your contract it says in all other duties that we assign, and and you are doing all other duties that are assigned. In the contract world, it's not really like that. I mean, some people do get trapped into that, kind of doing other things or more than they signed up to do, but I believe that that's more of like a personal, like, personality thing, not being able to set those boundaries and say, no, this is the job that I'm doing and I'm not doing any more or any less. If you want me to do more, then we need to come up with another arrangement. So for me, it's just having that ability to say no and that ability to say yes and work as much as I want or as little as I want. And then being virtual even adds more of a option or flexibility to that. So like we were talking about working in the different time zones. Hey, maybe you're not a morning person and you want to work somewhere on the West Coast where, school starts over there 8:30, over here it's 11:30, right?
Right.
So you have that time, you can, go and do your errands and do everything and then start your work day, or vice versa. If you are working in the West Coast and you want to do something in the morning and have that time after, or even, if you're just working here in the East Coast, you're going to be done with your day very early over there. So you have almost the whole day to do whatever it is that you want to do, spend the time with your kids, your family, or recreational things, or have another job if you want. Like, hey, maybe you're a painter, maybe you're a musician.
Hey, Shanae, we call that the hustle.
Yes. Maybe you're a musician and you do gigs at night and you don't get home until 1 a.m. Then you want to start your day at 11:30.
Yes.
You want to start your work day at 11:30.
Yes.
So it just gives you, all the flexibility and all the options, and just being open to that and getting licensed in multiple states just opens up so many doors for you.
Well, that takes us into that next question.
Yeah, let's talk about the money. Hey, there are...
I say the income streams.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. But, and this is what I know that a lot of our listeners are trying to figure out in their minds. How does this actually work? Would you say that the contractual remote way of life has actually changed you? And how has that worked for you?
Yeah, it's definitely changed me. My brick and mortar job for a school psychologist, for working in public schools, they pay pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. they pay pretty well, pay probably more than most, and that was all fine. And then, like I said before, and then I had kids. And then I had kids. Not one, not two, not three. But for me, my initial, my 2 4-year-olds, they're twins. So I had 2 at once. Right. So it's double the expense. So you're prepping in your mind for one child. Like, yeah, okay, diapers and everything. You're like, nothing prepares you for multiples. Like, wow. Okay, no, you need double, or, bless those people out there with triplets and quadruplets. I don't know how they do it. But, yeah, just, cost of everything now post-COVID is astronomical. And I know we're all feeling the pinch. So, you hear the background right now. It's quiet. There's no kids here. The kids are at daycare, right? We know daycare is super expensive, and I am able to afford daycare for 3 kids simultaneously over here in northern New Jersey, where everything's high. And I would not be able to do that if I wasn't doing what I'm doing.
That's profound. Just
even if I know contractually, if you're working for an agency, the money doesn't really sound too great. Like, the pay ranges are probably between $40 to $70 an hour. I think 70 is probably the highest that I've seen working for an agency. If you do go work for yourself, you can see double that. So we're talking more like 80 to 140 an hour, and depending where you are too. If you're out in California, you can probably make like $200 an hour working in California. And guess what? You don't have to live in California to get California rates. You can be somewhere that is a lower cost of living, like Florida, and work, in California and get California rates. So there's that component as well. We also need to think about our time, and our time is also money. So when we are working a brick and mortar, and are we factoring in the commute, right? So some of us have long commutes. Me, I can never have a long commute because I hate driving. So the most you're going to get out of me is a 30-minute commute. I will refuse to work anywhere that is more than 30 minutes away. So
and I know some of these school sites have like multiple school assignments.
Yes, that too, right? So you have to now plug that into your day where you're getting less done, right? Because you have to go to this school, then you travel to this school. One school might be close, one school might be far. I know a lot of states, work through like counties, and the county school district is spread out. New Jersey doesn't do that. We just have, in your city is the school district. So nothing's really going to be too far anyway. So, as far as that goes, right? So you have your commute there, you have your commute back, you have gas money, you have things that you have to take into account that you don't have when you are doing virtual work. So you don't have to worry about that. You also have to wardrobe money, right? So coming to school, you got to get dressed, kind of, if I work from home, I could wear the same thing every day, and who's gonna know? No one's gonna know. No one's gonna know.
Well, now we all know.
Now we all know. You all know I wear the same thing every day. Also, again, that if you are a parent, and some people choose to have their kids stay home instead of, putting them in school or putting them in daycare, or, some parents have school-age children, and they do homeschool. You can do homeschool or whatever while you work. I would not suggest having small children while you are working virtually, unless you have someone there to help, because that would be super difficult. It's not as easy as it sounds like. I have done it with my last daughter, but my husband was here to help. He had maternity leave, and he was here with that. But once he went back to work, believe she went to school, because that was not going to work. But you also have that ability if you wanted to just do partial childcare and just do afternoons or 3 days a week or 2 days a week if you work from home. If you work from brick and mortar, you don't have that option. So that is also something to account for when we're talking about finances. And then
so Shanae, what about the pay structures? Because I think in terms of like the game changer is that some of these pay structures are weekly compared to the typical bi-weekly situation.
Yes. So that's going to depend on either if you're contracting directly, but usually if you're contracting directly, I think they kind of pay like once a month. So you have to take that into account. If you are contracting with a company, it's going to depend on the company. Some companies do weekly pay, usually with a 1099. They'll do weekly pay, a W-2. Some W-2s do weekly pay too. But yeah, it's all going to depend on the company. They might do bi-weekly, and then some companies will do monthly. Like the school district pays them monthly, they also pay you monthly. So it's all going to depend on the company. But one other thing I wanted to point out about the pay structure. So again, the contract companies, the pay looks less, but I do want listeners to keep in mind that every company is different. Some companies are going to guarantee you hours, meaning that if they are guaranteeing you 40 hours a week, you are going to get paid for those 40 hours, whether you work 1 hour or 20 hours. You could do no work that week, you are guaranteed to get 40 hours of pay. Some companies don't do that. You have to bill for every little thing that you do. Whatever you do during the day, you have to bill for that. It's not guaranteed time. And when we're comparing, we also need to look at workload, right? So a lot of us in the brick and mortar take work home. We take work home, we come to the office early, and we leave the office late. And that is unpaid time. So how much are you really getting paid per hour if you are putting in all this extra time and you do not get paid for it because you're trying to make deadlines but you're understaffed, right? So it's up to you. I have seen school sites saying, oh, they did 120 assessments for the year, which is pretty high if you ask me. But you may work for a contract company and they're paying you $50 an hour and it's 40 hours guaranteed, but you may only do 35 assessments.
Well, and I guess it depends, because I know you're up north, and obviously like the pay rates, if you were in a brick and mortar space, sounds like they're exceptional. And I do recall even like for New York, I mean, the retirement system, from what I hear, is amazing. But Shanae, there's like, from my experience being in states like Florida, and there are other states like Georgia or whatever, some of these contractual rates are higher than what the brick and mortar is paying and offering.
Yes, that's true too.
So financially, it is like life-changing for those who are in states that they're just known traditionally to pay low salaries hourly.
Yeah.
In terms of the hourly rate is lower compared to a contractual. So we are starting to see that there's some people who are leaving the brick and mortar to take on a contract or maybe multiple contracts, and from what I've seen, and they have felt like financially it has just changed their lives totally, and they feel like they're being paid their worth now, and then they have more time to do other things that they enjoy. So it's really it's very interesting and from one state to the next, these
Right.
contractual companies, their rates are just like, wow, you know, and then you're just thinking like, and for some to say, hey, you know, I'm young, so I don't need to worry about retirement right now. This is what I can do right now, and I can make this more, you know, this hourly rate is higher than what I'm getting. And this is happening, you know, in a lot of these states. They cannot beat these contract companies.
And you hit the nail on the head with the key word there: multiple contracts.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's what I was trying to hit at. We're like, okay, well, you did 120 assessments and they're only doing 35. So let's see, I can get three contracts that are doing 35 kids, and I'm still doing the same amount of work.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, and we're seeing that you're talking six-figure incomes that you can. I've seen some numbers people have shared, and you're just like, wow, you know, from having those multiple opportunities. And, you know, and it just fits to their schedule. It's their schedule. How they, you know, I can, you know, maybe I'm working 10 hours over here, and maybe over here I'm doing 20 hours somewhere else. But, you know, but they're seeing they're seeing the beauty of this financially. And it's amazing. I was so surprised myself. And I was one of those individuals too. I just wasn't like, I couldn't wrap my head around this remote evaluation, you know, and all of that connected until, just like yourself, someone brought it to my attention. And I was just at a place where I was ready to listen, you know.
Right.
So,
right. And everybody doesn't want evaluations. So you can go out there, you can find something that, like, you know, some schools are looking for counseling. Some schools are looking for consultation. You know, that not everybody wants assessments. I know where
exactly.
You know.
I've seen some remote positions involving being an interventionist. And so, you know, if you're a K through 12 educator, you're a teacher. There's opportunities for you as well. I'm seeing some. I kind of one of those surfers of different job boards, and I saw recently we even have school administrator remote positions that are out there, and I'm just shocked by that. You know, just like, so anybody in education, I mean, the world's your oyster. I mean, there's so many opportunities in a remote space.
All right, so we're getting toward the end of this broadcast. We definitely want to thank Ms. Pritchett for sharing her experiences and such. What do you guys see as the future role in school psychology as we navigate the remote world, and between the remote world and the brick and mortar world? What does the future hold as you see it?
I think the future is going to be very modernized, as you know, you used the word before, modern school psychology. That is very much what I think we are going towards, with even, you know, the options that are out there that were not there even 15 years ago, or, you know, when I was in my graduate program. Those opportunities that were not there, that nobody even knew about, you know, now that you have a virtual psychologist, you can do that. You can do a hybrid. A lot of people are moving towards hybrid and travel school psychologists, and it's just so many more options there, and how you can mix and you know, tailor it to what you want it to be, or what you like, what is going to bring you more quality of life, right? Even if you love the brick and mortar, there are aspects of virtual that you can bring to the brick and mortar. I believe that having that will be able to also push those buttons for the school psychologists who are there in the buildings to have options for themselves as well. Like, hey, they hired a virtual school psych. Why can't we have 2 days a week that we are working from home?
Exactly.
That is it. We are, I believe there's a con to that, right? Because some people just, they can't have that freedom. They need to be like, in the building, no, you need to do your work because they're home and they're distracted.
Right.
And,
so you would say this may not be for everybody.
Right. They need to be mature enough and say that, like, hey, no, I'm going to come to the building every day to get my work done. But
and maybe the hybrid model could be a better fit for that individual.
It is, because look at our environments. Look at the spaces that we're working in. We're working in offices. We're working in trying to find spaces to test kids in. Why do we have to do that when we can work from the comfort of our own home in an office and get the same amount, if not more, work done?
Exactly. Yeah, so I was thinking in terms of school districts, and they truly, there needs to be some flexibility. There definitely needs to be some more evaluation of, in terms of their productivity, efficiency. Because I'm just saying, Shanae, I just remember, and I was at the time a psychological services assistant director with a district, and I remember we did more work during the pandemic than we had ever done before, and looking at the numbers, it was just insane. And even when I put out this survey to the staff, to the school psychs, and about close to maybe 88% of staff said they would prefer to have this ability, that flexibility to, work remotely a part of the week and then report to their office space. Maybe they worked a couple days, like at home, maybe getting reports done or whatever, or have that schedule of assessments on specific days, and then maybe having a Friday off, which is some districts are looking at and they're doing. Even with teachers, having the Friday off to make it worth their while. And because they know, even with a teacher shortage, they got to do whatever they got to do to keep teachers engaged and wanting to stay, in that brick and mortar world. So I just think there definitely needs to be some flexibility. And with the modern school psychologists, everybody just needs to be aware that at a certain point, a brick and mortar traditional model will need to in the future be considered, and not all have this thing of, oh well, this is only what we can do. We're only offering on-site assessments and on-site school psychologists. There needs to be some flexibility across districts to keep people engaged, because it is really harder and harder to get schools, just future people, individuals who want to even sign up to be a part of a school psychology program to seek that degree, because this generation, they're looking for flexibility. They don't really care about being homeowners. They would rent. They just want freedom. Like you said, I almost sung that song that I know. They want freedom, as you expressed, and they don't want the traditional period. So at this point, I guess, I really want to thank you, Shanae, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And hopefully that, because I know that I was able to connect with you because of a colleague who heard one of your presentations that you had regarding what we're discussing today in terms of the remote contractual work. How can our listeners connect with you or learn more about your work? Is there somewhere where they can connect with you?
Yes, connect with me through email. My email is the LPC School Psych at gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much.
And I do have another presentation coming up. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to do it, but it's coming.
Well, and also, I know that in the future, we'll be talking to you and following you, and know you're doing great things. And hopefully we'll be in touch again soon.
Yes, it was a pleasure.
So that's going to do it for our podcast for today. We definitely want to thank again Shanae Pritchett, the experienced school psychologist, remote school psychologist, and general expert in the remote school psychology field. And of course, Dr. Paula Lewis. Join our Facebook group, School Psych Visionaries, and follow Call Ride Conversations with Dr. Paula Lewis at www.buzzsprout.com.